Hey, hi all. This is BRR. Welcome to BRR Knowledge Hub. In this today's session, we'll talk about RESTful API designing guidelines, like what are the guidelines we need to follow to design RESTful API, and the process of creating different, the steps in the RESTful API, like endpoints and the usage of HTTP methods and the naming conventions, and like some of the operations like sorting and searching and filtering and paging kind of things, how we are going to implement in the RESTful APIs. And also we can, we will discuss about the response codes, like what are all the response codes. Basically, we need to return back to the client when client is invoking a RESTful API based on different categories like success categories and client-side error categories and server-side categories, server-side error categories, sorry. Okay. So we'll talk about this thing, this RESTful API. First of all, what is a REST? REST is nothing but, this representational state transfer. It is an architectural style for providing standards between computer systems and the web. So this is making, the very easier for systems to communicate with each other, like web server and the client. So here RESTful API is nothing but the application programming interface that uses HTTP methods or verbs like get, put, post, and delete kind of things. So this technology is generally preferred for the mobile applications, and it is very more robust, and it is using SOAP protocol, simple object access protocol technology, because REST leverages less bandwidth on the network, and it is making it more suitable for internet usage. So when it comes to RESTful web services and WCF services, or the web services which are REST based, with the RESTful services, you can do anything you already do with normal web services. So in this video session, I will talk about the guidelines, like how we are going to, design the RESTful API. But before designing of RESTful API, I just wanted to let you know the terminology what we are going to use it in RESTful API endpoint design. So terminology is nothing but the naming convention and the the context and the main focusing areas which we need to consider during the designing of RESTful API. Okay, so the first terminology we are going to use it in RESTful API is resource. So resource is an object or representation of something which has some associated data, and therefore we can use some methods to operate on the associated data, like delete, add, update kind of methods. So it is an object or representation of something which has some associated data. For examples, books, employees, etc. So generally, when you design RESTful API, so you need to look at the requirement and identify the resources. After that, you start exposing endpoints to operate the resources. Okay. And second terminology we are going to talk about is collections. So collections is nothing but set of resources. So resource is nothing but an object And collections is nothing but set of resources. Like, so it is nothing but set of resources. Example, same employees, companies. So here the companies and employees are the collections of employee and company. So this is what the second terminology we are going to refer while we start implementing of RESTful API endpoints. And third terminology is URL. It's nothing but uniform resource locator. It is nothing but a path we are going to define to associate the resources and the required operations. So I can say it is a path through which a resource can be located and some actions can be performed on it. So it is a uniform resource locator. That means basically it is a path to locate the endpoint where it is and how we are going to invoke for the relevant requirement. Okay, so these three are the terminologies we are going to refer when we start implementing RESTful APIs. Okay, so basically in this session I would like to discuss about the designing guidelines. First one is API endpoint. This one I just wanted to discuss first of all. So this is nothing but the APIs methods, like what kind of methods we are going to expose it on a particular RESTful API. Let's write a few APIs for the employees, which has some methods like addition, deletion, and updation kind of thing to understand more. Or we'll write something talk about companies which has some employees to understand more. So if I write get all employees, this is my endpoint. It is an API which will respond with the list of employees. So in a similar way, you can define some more endpoints. Let's say add new employee or update employee or delete employee. So like that, you can expose some more endpoints. So there will be tons of other API endpoints like these for different operations. All of those will contain many redundant actions. So redundant actions is nothing but, here I'm just saying add and update, delete. If I want to remove multiple employees, I'm going to write another thing as delete employees. So in this case, my method will get redundant. So action gets redundant since all these API endpoints would be burdensome time to maintain when API count increases. So what is wrong in that is the URL should only contain resource, not actions or webs. Here, this endpoint should not contain this action. These are the actions. So actions should not be mentioned in the endpoint. Always it should contain the resource. Here the resource is employees. This is the object. Okay. So the correct way is, companies. This is the resource. It's a good example actually, which contains no action. But the question is, how do we tell the server about the actions to be performed on company's resource? So whether to add, delete, or update. This is where the HTTP methods comes into the picture. Okay. So what are all the HTTP methods here? This is the second guideline I'm going to talk about here. HTTP methods. So basically, we have 4 type of methods: get, post, delete, and put. These are the HTTP methods, or sometimes we can call it webs. So these are playing the main role in the RESTful API endpoints. The resource should always be plural in the API endpoint. And if you want to access one instance of the resource, we can always pass ID in the URL. That is what the main designing guideline we should follow when you start designing RESTful API. If you want to get list of companies, so you need to define companies. In a similar way, if you want to get specific company details, you need to define companies slash 3387. So what it is doing is it will return the details of company 3387. It returns the details of company 3387. A similar way, delete. Delete also you can specify delete path simply companies slash 3387 for the method delete. So these are basically get method get path. So this also method get path. And when it comes to delete, method delete, you can say this way, this what it will do is it deletes the company 3387. So in few other use cases also we can write it. If we have resources under resource employees of a company, then few of the sample APIs, like how we are going to write is for the get, okay, companies slash 3387 employees. So what it will do is it returns the list of all employees from the company 3387. In a similar way, if you want to return, okay, specific employee, get method, how we are writing is companies, some 4 employees 45. What it will do is it gets the details of employee 45 which belongs to company 4. This is how we are going to define. In similar way, post method also you can define like companies. It creates a new company and return the details of the new company which is created. It creates new company and returns the created company resource. Conclusion of this endpoint is the path should contain the plural form of resources, and the HTTP method should define the kind of action to be performed on the resource. Okay. So as I told you, this HTTP has defined a few set of methods which indicates the type of action to be performed on the resources. So these are the actions. So the URL is a sentence where resources are known and HTTP methods are webs. So here get method basically using for requesting data, and post method requests the server to create a resource, and delete method basically using for deleting a resource, and put method generally uses for creating a resource if it does not exist on the server. For example, a similar way like when it comes to put method, I'm just telling you example. Companies /3/ employees, some BRR. So it will request the server to update or create if does not exist. Okay, this is how the put method is working on it. Generally, put method is idempotent, which means multiple requests will have the same effect. Okay, and coming to the another area, response codes, HTTP response codes. So as I told you, there are different kind of things. Success category and redirection category and client error category, and finally server error category. Okay, coming to the success category, we have 200 code and 201 code. 200 code is nothing but OK status. That means if the request is successfully executed, standard HTTP response will return 200 for the get and put and post. 201 is nothing but created. The status code should be written wherever or whenever the new instance is created using a post method. Okay. And coming to the redirection category, so we have a 304 status code. This is only the one code. It is nothing but not modified. So this indicates that the client has a response already in its cache memory, and hence there is no need of transfer the same data again and again. It will just return from the cache. Okay. And coming to the client error category, we have different things. 400, this means bad request, and 401, this means unauthorized request, and 403, this is forbidden, and 404, this is not found. And when it comes to 400 request, this indicates that the request by the client was not processed as the server could not understand what the client is asking. So generally, if you are sending a request which is not understood by the server, then server will respond, or the client itself will respond with status code 4, because our question or the request which the client is asking is not in the correct format. And when this 401 is sent back to the client is when the client is sending a request, so that time client is not allowed to access the resources and should re-request with the required credentials. So when client is not having proper credentials, then this code will be written back. And when the 403 is being written by the server or the client, means when the request is sent by the client and the request is valid, the client is authenticated, but the client is not allowed access the page or resource for any reason. Example, sometimes the authorized client is not allowed to access the directory of the server. So that time it will send 403. And 404 simply indicates that the requested resource is not available in the server. And the last one is server category. So the main thing is 500 error. This is internal server error and 503. So these two are very, very important. This is service unavailable. So internal server is nothing but it indicates that the request is valid sent by the client, but the server is totally confused and the server is asked to solve some unexpected condition. That means, so after sending the request by the client, server is unable to process your request due to some exception or the error, or server is getting confused with the request sent by the client and it throws the exception and sends the response code as 503 is nothing but service unavailable, which indicates that the server is down or shut down or in the maintenance period. At the time when you send the request to a server, so this simply sends HTTP response code as service unavailable. So mostly the server is undergoing maintenance kind of thing. Okay, and coming to the next one, naming conventions. This is one more file name casing convention. So generally, I suggest When you define endpoints, request and response should be in the JSON format. That is what the uniform naming convention every or all the RESTful services are using. So I request like use camel case notation in the JSON format so that it is very consistent across all the endpoints. So make sure, I think it is consistent format we should use across the application. If the request body or response type is JSON, please follow camel case to maintain the consistency. And coming to the searching, sorting, and filtering and pagination. So when you have this kind of requirement, simply send the query string parameter along with your endpoint and should not define separate endpoints for this. Sorting, generally the client wants to get sorted list of companies. So in the get method, like the get method companies. So if you want to sort something, I suggest to pass, sort equal to criteria. Sort criteria. Don't expose another endpoint here. So that it will sort this sort criteria on the dataset and sends back the list of companies to the client. Okay, in a similar way, filtering also, I suggest to use query strings. The category. I'm just saying some banking and location is India. So you can send any query string parameters, but don't send the huge length of your URI, because if adding many query parameters, then get method makes the URL too long. Server may respond 414 URI status code because of huge length. So in those contexts, in those cases, parameters can also be passed in the request body of the post method. So if you have multiple or huge number of parameters, I suggest to use a request body method instead of passing these in the URI. Okay. Similarly, this pagination also and such also you can define the same way. Like if you want such something, just simply say such BRR. And similar way, pagination also you can say that 20 that so that it will return that particular page. So again, I'm telling you, if you're adding many recovery parameters in the get methods, make sure that URL should not be too long. If it is too long, the server may respond with a 414 error because of too long HTTP status. So in those cases, you should pass these parameters using request body of post. Okay. So I hope you understand the guidelines of RESTful API design and the terminologies which are going to use it in the API. So thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe this YouTube channel for more videos. Thank you.